When approaching an entrance between breakwaters, the ship should, if possible, steer along a line at right angles to the line joining them. This approach course must be obtained from the chart. As soon as the ship is steadied on the line of approach, look for a transit ahead. There may be a tidal stream across the entrance. If so, the course will have to be adjusted, and the ship will proceed with her bows not actually pointing at the entrance. The transit will show you if you're being set to one side or other of the line of approach. Watch the end of each breakwater and make sure that they both open on the land beyond. This will ensure that you're going to pass through the middle of the entrance. As soon as your bows enter slack water, leaving your stern in the tideway, your stern will begin to swing. Correct this by liberal use of your rudder. This point is sometimes overlooked. Hot fenders. We are now proceeding up harbour to secure to a buoy. Our first task is to form an estimate of the effect that the wind and the tidal stream are going to have on the ship when she comes to rest at the buoy. We then steer for a position from which we can approach the buoy, stemming the elements. When comparing the relative strength of wind and stream, remember that a high contrary wind is necessary to outweigh the effect of even a moderate stream. Once more, we shall find a transit useful in judging direction of the stream as we approach. Remember that the ship will have to be brought to rest with her bows close enough to the buoy for the picking up rope to be secured, and that she must be held there long enough for the buoy jumpers to finish their work. Be careful not to overshoot the buoy, and we must remember that once the ship is stopped, she must be held in place by well-judged use of her rudder and propeller.
Stop engines. Half astern. Stop engines. Half astern. Stop engines. Port 15, slow ahead. Stop engines. Midships.
Before slipping from the buoy, first see what the wind and tidal stream are doing.
Starboard 20.
If the tidal stream is strong enough for the ship to answer her rudder, she can be given a sheer clear of the buoy before slipping.
Half ahead. Slip. Midships, port 20. Midships. Steady.
If the tidal stream is not strong enough, it is usual to go astern a short distance and then point the ship clear with rudder and propellers.
Stop engines. Slow ahead. Midships, starboard 20. Midships, port 20. Midships, starboard 10. Midships, steady.
Here is a nut and bolt. When the bolt revolves, the nut is pushed away. But if we hold the nut still, the bolt is pushed away. It is on much the same principle that water resistance helps the screw propeller to push the ship along. But near the surface, this water resistance is relatively small. It increases as the depth increases. This means that the bottom blade has considerably more work to do than the top blade. Each blade exerts a thrust against the water at right angles to the surface of the blade. Part of this thrust can be used to drive the ship along, but the other part is wasted, as it is always pushing sideways. We have seen that the top blade, working nearer the surface, has less work to do, and so its sideways thrust fails to cancel out the opposite sideways thrust of the lower blade, part of which remains as a factor to be reckoned with. Most single screw ships, like the one we're now handling, are fitted with a right-handed screw. That is, the propeller turns clockwise when viewed from astern to drive the ship ahead. The effect of the lower blade tends to push the stern of the ship sideways with a considerable kick. When we move the engines astern, the pull of the lower blade is reversed, so the stern is pushed away to port. This transverse thrust is called the pull of the lower blade. It is worth careful study, because there are occasions when it becomes the most powerful of all the forces acting on the ship, particularly when she's moving from rest or when her engines are going astern. Whether two-bladed or three-bladed, all right-handed propellers behave in the same way, and all left-handed propellers do exactly the opposite. You will see how essential it is that you should know whether you have to deal with a right-handed or a left-handed screw ship. So long as we remember what the water surrounding the rudder is doing, we shall always find it easy to judge the combined effect of rudder and propeller under any conditions. Here is the ship at rest, engine stopped. Her rudder is obviously useless because the surrounding water is at rest. But as soon as the engines turn the propeller ahead, a stream of water is directed aft, so the rudder is placed in a moving flow of water and begins to take effect. As the ship gathers headway, the rudder gains full control. Even when we stop engines, the ship will still answer her rudder so long as she is making enough way through the water. That is, so long as she has what is called steerage way. But we often have to bring the ship to rest much more quickly, using the propeller as a brake by moving the engines astern. The propeller is now pulling the water away from the rudder and sending a stream forward. The water surrounding the rudder becomes confused, so the rudder is overcome by the pull of the lower blade, which swings the stern away to port and the bows to starboard in spite of the rudder. Notice that the ship continues to swing some time after the engines are stopped. Here is the ship at rest once more, with engines stopped. When the engines are moved astern, the propeller sends a stream of water forward, away from the rudder. Here again, the rudder will be powerless to prevent the lower blade from pulling the stern to port until the ship has gathered sufficient sternway. Notice that when the ship has gathered sternway, the rudder will take full control as soon as we stop engines. But remember that the ship is now pivoting aft, and if there is a strong breeze, her stern will tend to fly up into the wind. It often happens that we have to turn a ship short round, almost in her own length. This is the time to make full use of the pull of the lower blade. The great thing to remember in turning short round is to get a good swing on the ship and to keep her swinging. Let's take a closer look. Several times during the maneuver, we shall have to go astern, and each time we do this, our stern will kick to port and our bows to starboard. Therefore, it will be best to turn short round to starboard, because each time we move our engines astern, we shall add to the swing of the ship in the direction in which we want to go. It's a much longer business when a right-handed screw ship attempts to turn short round to port.
Port 30.
Don't swing that stern too close. Make quite sure that your stern has room to swing. This time, the swing will be checked every time we go astern.
Port 30. Stop engines. Astern. Stop. Ahead. Stop. Astern. Midships. Stop. Starboard 30. Ahead. Midships. Port 30. Midships.
So it's usually best to turn a right-handed screw ship short round to starboard. Turn in good time. Over to the port-hand side of the channel first, but not too close.
Starboard 30. Stop engines. Half astern.
Watch that lower blade, pulling her round in the right direction. She mustn't lose her swing.
Midships. Port 10. Midships.
And there we are, safely round. Now let's watch the whole turn in detail.
Starboard 30. Stop engines. Half astern. Stop engines. Half ahead. Midships. Port 10. Midships. Steady.
If there is a wind blowing, we can often use it to help us round. Start from the port-hand side. When we've brought the wind on our port beam, it will pay to make a short sternboard. As soon as we've gathered sternway, we shall have the wind, the pull of the lower blade, and the rudder, all swinging the stern in the direction required. Don't try a sternboard with the wind on the starboard beam, though, because in that case, it will be working against you. And don't forget that a left-handed screw ship does exactly the opposite. Here is a tip about turning short round in a tideway. The stream flows fastest in the deepest water, in the middle. If you are approaching the turn with the tide under you, cross over and get your bows over inshore and let the tide carry your stern round. If you approach the turn stemming the tide, keep your stern in slack water and swing your bows out into the stronger stream in mid-channel. Larger ships fitted with 2 or 4 propellers have the port propellers left-handed and the starboard propellers right-handed. Consequently, they can be turned short round with ease in either direction. The engines on the inner side of the turn are going astern, and their pull acts against the push of the engines outside the turn, going ahead. This allows the pull of the lower blades of both propellers to swing the stern in the right direction when turning short round, either to starboard or to port. That is why twin screw ships are so much easier to handle.